Welcome to our Yom Shir. We are following the Deer Shoe program, and therefore today we're Daf Chav Ches Amud Aleph. Ches Amud Aleph, and this is now Chav Zayin Amud Beis, still the Mishnah at the bottom of Chav Zayin Amud Beis. Fascinating Amud. Let's have fun. Be'ezus Hashem. Says the Heilige Mishnah. Good evening, Reb David. Says the Mishnah. Kol hayotzim min ha'etz ein madlikin bo ela pishtan. Anything that comes out of wood, so it seems like, which according to Rashi means anything that's organic, anything that grows, and you're not allowed to light with it, to use it as wicks for Shabbos, ela fishtan, except for flax. Yeah. Now this is very strange because Tosfos is right away asking on Rashi, what are you talking about? Of course, that cotton wool is very good. We use cotton wool till today as wicks, and why shouldn't it be good? Because cotton is also from the ground, it's from a flower. So if you Rashi mean yotzi min ha'etz means you disqualify anything that's from flowers, from Rashi says canvas, I don't know, anything that grows. The only one that's good one is pishtan, doesn't make sense. Therefore Tosfos argues with Rashi. And Tosfos says yotzi min ha'etz means mamish tree. You can't take, things that grow from the tree mamish, things that are like wood, things that are from the eights. They are not, from them you cannot light. That's what Tosfos says, And the way Tosfos defines it, and says Tosfos, Pishtan, although it's not eights, as we're going to see in the Gemara, Pishtan halachically is called eights. Pishtan, although it's not a tree, but it's called a tree, right? And that's why it has to be mentioned as an exception to the rule. Anything that's like the bark of the tree, you can't light with, or things that come from the tree, you can't light with. The only thing that's called a tree, and you can light with it, is pishtan, excluding everything else that's mina etz. And now the second part, that's going to be the main issue today. Anything that comes out from etz, anything that is, again, and now we are talking about anything that's growing, let's say cotton, is not mitame tumas oilim ela pishtan. That means as follows. It says in the Torah, as we all know, and I'll give you a little bit of a lecture because I saw the Rishonim, I saw the Rambam, so we're going to get the background. So now the story is like this. We all know that it says in the Torah, in Parshas Parshas Chukas, you have an oil, and under the oil, inside the oil is a dead corpse, dead body, and other things. People, Kalim, they all become Tomei. What about the tent itself? What about the oil itself? So now it says visa al oil. It says in the Torah, you also sprinkle on the oil, which is kind of strange because normally things that are mechuber lakarka are not mekabel tuma. Building from stone, the building from metal, if they're built into the ground, are not mekabel tuma. It's always the rule. So what does it mean that the tent is mekabel tuma? One of the two. Tosfos reminds us, the second Tosfos, the end of the page, that in Daf Yud Zayin Amud Aleph, we spoke about the farmer that goes with the beam, very nice, over his shoulder, and there's a tumah, there's a mace, there's a thing, and then it says that all kalim, they transfer the tumah and also receive tumah. In other words, they're not connected to the ground. Okay, fine, and they receive, they give the tumah. They create ohel to spread. That's the word, to spread the tumah from the mace that's under them and the kalim that's under them, right? And they also become Tomei. Two for the price of one. In other words, if it's a mobile thing, not connected to the ground, and there's a mace underneath and something else underneath, they bring the Tumah and they become Tomei as well. Okay, that's not only Pishtan, that's everything. That's also beam of wood. Says Tosfos, and here comes big news, and the Ravid says the same. Rambam is not so clear, but the Ravid says, and there's the Kelim, the Tosfos, and many others, that's the Chiddush of Pishtan. Pishtan and other materials, if you make an oil, which I think is quite common, let's say, in the army, in the camp, real camp, camping, you have a tent, right? A real tent. You have a tent that's connected to the ground, with stones, with sticks, you connect it to the ground. Although it's connected to the ground, if it's made out of pishtan, it's mekabel tumah. Wow. It's creating the tumah and it receives the tumah. That is only pishtan and some other choice materials. But let's say you have, says the Rambam, a stone building or a building out of wood, very common in America, right? And all these things, if they're connected to the ground, they're not mekabel tumah. Only pishtan, and I'll give you a hint, I'll spoil the story. Pishtan and other materials that were used for the Mishkan and similar materials of the Mishkan, semer, pishtan, leather, they are, although connected to the ground, they break the rule. Because normally things that connected to the ground are not Mekabel Tuma. But those things that are pishtan and other materials from the Mishkan, Mishkan is the epitome of Ohel, as we're going to see. Those things, although attached to the ground, not only they create tumah underneath, they also receive it themselves. So what do? You can't take it to the mikveh, but the kohen or the other person has to sprinkle in the third and seventh day. That is, in short, what I clearly saw today. That's a good starting point. Baruch Hashem. I never knew it myself, I'll be honest with you. I saw this more, I never chapped what's going on until, I mean, I did in the past, but as I was preparing today, I wasn't chapping, and apparently, yes, it's an exception to the rule. These things, although mechuber l'karka, the mekabel tuma. It's big chiddush. By the way, there is another exception, which we all see next week's parsha, obviously Negoim. Negoim, there's a special tuma just for the house of stones. That's a different story, right? If you have tzaras in the house, you have to, right, break it. Then that's a different story. That's not now, it's just another exception. Right, so says the Gemara, Minalan the pishtan ikri eitz. How do you know that pishtan is called wood, which especially according to Tosfos is a very major thing, yeah? He's saying the exception to the rule is pishtan. Who told the pishtan is an eitz? Ma pitom. Pishtan is a flower, it's not a tree. It says in the Pasuk about the Rochov. Rochov, the Zoino, she hosted the two Meraglim, Pinchas and Kolev, and it says, V'hiyal tam hagaga, she took them to the attic, yeah, to the loft, V'titman and V'pishte ha'etz, and she hid them there. You know, they were searching for them. So she hid them inside the pishtin. In other words, inside she had like bundles of pishtan, whatever strands of pishtan, and it's called pishte ha'etz. Why eitz? Oh, the Torah decided, I'm not sure why, that pishtan, maybe very heilige reasons, that pishtan is called eitz. So that's why we define it that way. So Lamaisa pishtan is the only one out of the mamish wood, what we call wood, they can light with, and also it's the only organic thing that's ma'ahil and receives tuma itself. And as we said, as we explained, what does that mean? Let's say you have a wooden house. That's extremely common, right? You have a house made out of wood and a ceiling made out of wood, and there's a mace inside the house and other things inside the house. Of course, they become tome. They do. But the house itself does not become tome. Yeah, the only one that becomes tome, although mechuber lakarka, is pishtan, from the family of organic materials. I'm not talking here about wool. That will come later. Yeah, Minolan. How do you know? Who told you that? Omer bilozo gomer oil mimishkan. Oh, there's a gzera shava oil from Mishkan. What does that mean? Ksiva ocha zoy satoira odom kiyamus beoil. When it comes to Tumas Hameis, including the fact that the oil becomes Tomeh, as it says there, it says the word ohel, tent. Oil literally means tent. It says so. V'ksiv hosom, over there in the Mishkan, it says, V'yifros es oil ala Mishkan. It says also there, regarding the Mishkan, it says that Yifros es oil, yeah, Moshe Rabbeinu, he spread the oil over the Mishkan. Okay. Male halan shel pishtan koru oil, afkan shel pishtan koru oil, which means one of the Mishkan, as we all know, this is very important because this is going to follow us the whole time. The Mishkan had 3 or 4 layers. It's actually Machloikis or Yudram Nehemiah. The Mishkan had definitely at least three. There was no ceiling. There's no proper ceiling made out of wood or stones, right? There was a kroshim all over, right, from all sides, all 3 sides actually. And then you had the one made out of wool and linen, 3 types of wool and one linen, right? Tolas shoni, semel, tchelis, tolas shoni, and argaman, 3 colors of wool and 1 strand of linen. Yes, it was shatnez. These are the 10 yerios in the bottom. And top of them, there was another layer of yeris izim. It's very important to know that that's a basic for the whole shir, yeah? That was 11 yerios of 11, awnings of izim, of wool of the goats, right? And on top of that, there was leather, which we'll discuss later. So out of all the materials that cover the Mishkan and are somehow called ohel, the only one made out of anything from the ground is a pishtan. So that's how we know. So now we know that just like the materials of the Mishkan, including pishtan, yeah, are called ohel, so too when the Torah talks about oil hameis, those materials too are called oil and they become tomei. Now, what you have to know, and I don't know how much to go into it, but the Tosfos discusses it in the Sfas Emes. There is all the time this ambiguity here in the Amud, because really the Mishkan is called the Mishkan. The one that has Pishtan, the lower level, level one, is called Mishkan, and that's what the Pishtan was. Ohel is actually the one on top of that. Oil is the one of the Izim, which we're not talking about. So they asked, Betachlis, yeah, one shot is that Lamaisa, the bottom ones, I think even Rashi hints to it, the bottom one is also called Ohel. It's Mishkan and all together. Rashi says later, Oil or Mishkan. Yeah, so the middle one, the bottom one at the end of the door. Oh, or other people say the Lamaisa, even though the middle one is called oil, but the word oil appears in the Parsha, so make the Gzera Shova. Frek the Gemara. So Bekitzer, now we basically got the whole thing. So those materials that are used for the Mishkan, right now we're focusing on Pishtan, and then we'll talk about other ones as well. Those materials that were in the Mishkan as oil, as the cover, they're called ohel in general, and therefore the one of the mace is also called oil. Those materials, if they cover the mace and the other stuff, they are called oil, and they become tumah and spread the tumah as well. That's it.
But the possibly is also called Yemos Ohel.
Yeah.
It's luring out that din of below it.
And also above, both.
But the object is the Ohel itself, though. It's also
yes, but that, no, to spread tuma downstairs, that's everything. That's also wood and stone. Mechuber, if even if the mechuber, of course.
So Makabel too is Ohel.
Is only there you learn from the Mishkan. Yeah. Only those that were in the Mishkan, not everything else. Yeah, for sure.
So this the Gzera is teaching us what?
That it becomes tumah. Not only it spreads down, it becomes tumah as well. Continues the Gemara. Now very nice. Beautiful, David. Rashi is really asking the question that how do you really know that? How do you know that the other materials create tumah downstairs? So Rashi says, Tani minayin laso shal me'ilin ba'oil, ma mitzor akal v'chule. There's another drosha from a tzaras. Okay, there's another drosha for that. It's a nice point. Very good. Rashi points out that really there's another source for how do you know that wood, metal. How do you know that these things bring tumah downstairs? That's from a different drosha. But for them to be that they create tumah. Yeah, a regular wooden or stone house, of course they create tumah downstairs between the mace and the spread it between the mace and the people. Yeah. Okay, good. It's a good point. You see Rashi at the beginning of the narrow lines, if you want. Now, continues the Gemara. Now, if so, malalan shdurin v'chutan kofel shisha. Afkan Shdurim v'chutun kofel shisha, which means the pishtan in the Mishkan was very specific. It wasn't just strands of pishtan; it was shazur. It was like intertwined, like twisted, intertwined, woven like this. And there was 6 strands. Pishtan in the Torah is called shesh. Shesh, as we all know, is 6, right? So it was 6 fibers that were intertwined. Yeah, they were like that, twisted. And so maybe only that kind of pishtan in that form. Maybe only that one is Mekabel Tuma, because you learn it from the Mishkan. You learn it from the Mishkan, go all the way. Talmud Loimar, oil riba, which means the word oil appears, so to speak, too many times in the Pasha of the Mace. In the Pasha of Mace, it said oil, oil. I could have just said, boy, why do you have to say oil again? It's coming to tell you all types of oil, meaning it's pishtan, or also we'll see wool, but pishtan, but doesn't have to be dafka pishtan exactly like the Mishkan. It's pishtan, of all sorts. Oil riba, afilu kol milinami. Wait, if oil, if there's extra word oil, maybe all materials, plastic, I don't know, wood, stone, maybe they all receive the tumah as well. Says the Gemara, no, if so, what does the Gzera Shova do to you? The Shova definitely has to constrict you, to minimize you. Very good. Back the Gemara, wait, are you sure that the only materials that were made out of wood or anything organic were the pishtan on top? Excuse me, what about the kroshim? If not for the kroshim, the beams on the side, right? If not for those, for the kroshim, for the 48 kroshim, the whole thing would have collapsed. Maybe the kroshim are also called ohel, right? So maybe just like kroshim made out of wood, of atzeshitim oimdim, they are part of the Mishkan of the oil, so too, if I had a wooden house connected to the ground, maybe the wooden house connected to the ground, nice American house, would also be Mekabel Tumah from the mace, maybe. Amar Kro, no. V'osisa kroshim la mishkan. You have to create the kroshim for the mishkan, right? Mishkan kohen mishkan, then kroshim kohen mishkan. The kroshim are not the mishkan. The kroshim are there as an accessory, a very important one, to hold the mishkan. The mishkan is what's on top. As I told you, the mishkan is the lower layer. Maybe the one on top we'll see, but the lower layer of the lower ceiling. But the sides are not mishkan. They are the holders of the Mishkan. And therefore you can't, they're not called Ohel. Yeah, they're not oil or Mishkan. They're crushing. And therefore you don't learn from them for a regular house of wood. According to what you're saying, Vasisa Michsela Ohel. Oh, Achinami Michselo Ikri Ohel, right? In other words, if you're telling me, if you're getting like nitpicking, and you tell me, oh, it's not the Mishkan, it's a kroshim for the oil. If so, it says you should make a michse. What's michse? A cover, right? It says in the Torah, create a cover for the oil. That's the third level. The third level, the lowest one is Mishkan, middle is oil, the top one is called a michse, like a cover. Like according to Rabbi, it was a one piece of leather on top, right? According to Rabbi Nehemiah, it was one piece of leather on top, and that's michse oil. So michse la oil is also not called the oil. It's a cover of the oil. It's not the real thing. In other words, so you're going to tell me clearly that the third layer, the top one, is not the real Mishkan. It's a cover of the Mishkan, just like the Kroshim, another real thing. And therefore, leather definitely should not be in the league. If I have a leather tent connected to the ground, according to this, it shouldn't be Mekabel Tuma because it's not the real Mishkan. Okay, maybe. Ella, you're going to run into trouble now. As we're going to see soon, Belozo had the question. Interessant question. He has a question. You have a tent made out of pig skin. It's allowed. Don't be shocked, yeah? Or made out of, I don't know, a skin of the elephant, yeah? And the question is, behema tmeya, do we or don't we say that it's mekabel tuma from the mace if it's made out of behema tmeya? What kind of question is it? Or behema tmeya? The Gemara is now exploring. Wait a second. Ashta now, or behema tehoira lo mitame, or behema tmea mibaya. In other words, if you're now establishing that whatever is not called the real Mishkan, whatever the accessory for the Mishkan, like the koshim, is not reflecting on anything. So the top, which is leather, is also not the real Mishkan. It's just a michse, and therefore leather, even kosher leather, should not be mekabel tuma. So you're asking me about Tome one. Let me explain. We're going to see soon, and one of the Rishonim already says it here, that the question with Behema Tmeya was, we assume that the top layer of the Mishkan was Behema Tehoira. We had a question about it. Tachash, what kind of animal it was, the top layer, the leather one. And then we explore and we ask, maybe even if it was Behema Tmeya, maybe it was Behema Tmeya, and really Behema Tmeya is Metame. But if you tell me that the top layer is not Mishkan, what is there to learn from it? We're going to have a doubt now if it's kosher or treif, but who cares? You're telling me b'chlal that the top one is michsel oil. Answers the Gemara, shiny hosom. Over there it's different. Why? Meaning there's a difference between the leather cover and the kroshim on the side. Why is that? The hadre kro, dichtiv v'noseh sirius hamishkan ves oil moyed michsel u'michseh tachash asher olov. There's one pasuk that mentions all three levels together. Look how nice. Yerius Mishkan is the bottom. Oyhel Moyed is the top, is the middle one of the Izim. Michsel, Michsat Tachash are the one or two leather covers on top. Makish Enlon Tachtoin. Because we compare them all, we juxtapose them all, the top and the bottom, all three levels. Atachton Koro Oil, Afelin Koro Oil. Very good. Just like the bottom one is called Oil, so too, it could be the middle one or the bottom one. That's a question, but the bottom ones are Oil. So to the top, although maybe it's not oil, but it's mukash, meaning they're all called oil regarding tuma. And we can learn from all of them that they're metame b'oil mace. While the kroshim are not mentioned together in the same pasuk. When we mention the whole one big happy family kind of pasuk, we only mention the three layers. We don't mention the sides. So the sides are not mukash to the top, therefore the sides have a lower status, and therefore from the sides, which is wood, no, wood is not a material that's mekabel to masoyalim as a tent. Now, Gufa, excuse me. Gufa. Oh, that's going to get interesting now. Gufa. Yeah, let's now zone in on the question from before. Boy Rabbi Lozo. Rabbi Lozo is asking a question. Oh, behemoth tameh maushi tame tumas oilin. Yeah. The question is, or of behemoth tameh, should it be metame tumas oilin? Frag the Gemara, Maika mibaile. What's his question, Bechlal? In other words, if you remember, Ablezer, he was the one who said at the bottom of the previous page that we learn oil from Mishkan. Now, in Mishkan, we assume there was no behemoth tameh. So why are you contemplating the idea that behemoth tameh should Bechlal transfer the tumah up and down, maybe down, but receive the tumah mapitom? The assumption is it wasn't in the Mishkan. So why Bechlal contemplating the idea behemoth tameh should be in the list of materials? So far, so good. We have leather of kosher. I assume the top one is kosher, and pishtin and semer, and izim also. Look at the Rambam. He says these are the materials that really not only bring down the tumah, they also receive the tumah. But behemoth tameh, where do you get that from? Omar of Adabar Ava tachash shoyo b'mei Moshe kamibayale tomehoyo otor hoyo. Wow. In other words, it says that there were two types of animals that their skin, their hide, was used for the top of the Mishkan, for the cover. One of them is Oros Elim Odomim and Oros Choshim. Oros Elim, I understand, it's a ram, probably. But when you talk, maybe Eyal, I'm not sure. One of them is a hart, one of them is a ram. It's a kosher animal. Well, a Maisa, what's tachash? Tachash was Bimei Moshe. It was created only for the times of Moshe. And as you'll see tomorrow, you learn maybe from Adam Arishon. But Lamaisa, it was an animal that existed then, especially for the Mishkan, and disappeared. Yeah, extinct species. Yeah. So now the question is, that tachash, we don't know what it was. Maybe it was not kosher. How do you know? That's his question. I follow my own idea, says Oblezo. I'm consistent. I only learned from the Mishkan, but then that's good for my question. That animal that was in the Mishkan, was it Torah or Tameh? If it's Tameh, then Behemoth Tameh is also Nitma from a mace. Omar of Yosef, Mighty Baile. What's the question? Tanina. It says Mufurish in the Brisa, we have a rule that anything to do with the Meleches Shamayim, any type of avodas kodesh, such as Mishkan, should only be, you only use a Behemoth Torah. You don't do Chas V'Shalom Chazir for, I don't know, Chalila Sefer Torah, it's Tefillin, as we'll see tomorrow. You don't, not for the Mishkan either. So what's the question? So the Gemara, therefore clearly, what? Behemoth Tameh is not metame because it did not exist in the Mishkan. Tachash wasn't tameh. I frag the Gemara. It's not so simple. Meisiv Rabbi Abba. Rabbi Abba is now asking on what we just said. He's challenging just now what we just said about that it's for sure tahar, for sure kosher. It's not so simple. Rabbi Yehuda says shnei michsos hoyu. There were two leather covers for the top of the Mishkan. Echad shel oros elim odomim. One of them was the red skin of Elim, probably the rams. They used to hit them until they got red, and they were very good and red. The other one was Oros Tchoshim. Oros Tchoshim, okay, we can still assume what's a tachash? It's a kosher animal, possibly. Okay, I can accept that. But here comes trouble. Here comes trouble. There was only one cover, yeah? There was one cover only. And that one cover, which was half Oros Elim and half of the Tchoshim, as Rashi says, right? And he calls the Tchoshim Tala Ilan. In other words, Rabbi Nechemia, as opposed to his opponent, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Nechemia says it was one cover. It says all of it's really one level made out of two together. And that, you know how we call the tachash? I know what's tachash. It's Tala Ilan. Yeah, Tala Ilan, says Rashi, something very interesting that ignites the imagination of many people. It's a non-kosher animal that has like spotted skin. Of course, we can think of the tiger, leopard. I'm not such a mumche in all these types. Makes sense. You also say Tala Ilan, the one is hanging in the trees. And we know the tigers, they always sit in the tree as opposed to lion, right? They always sit in the big tree branches, the tigers, right? So therefore, Tala Ilan, so probably a tiger. I don't know. I wasn't there. But it makes sense. Excuse me, is tiger kosher? Reg the Gemara, the Tala Ilan Tomehu. Oh, so you see, if you define it so clearly, Rav Nechemia, that the tachash is a Tala Ilan, is maybe a tiger, it's Tomeh. So it looks like there was a Chayat Tmea there. So why are you so sure that everything was tar? So maybe he has a point, Reb Lezer, when he asks this question. Says the Gemara, no. Hachiko Amar, kemin tala ilanhu sheyesh b'gvonin harbe, which means he's similar to tala ilan because he has many colors, many gvonin. Below tala ilan, yeah, but it doesn't mean it was tala ilan. Rabbi Nechemia says doime kemin tala ilan. It is similar to tala ilan, but it's not. He maybe looked like tiger. Maybe I'm wrong about tiger. Looked like some colorful animal. I don't know what yet. Maybe it was a colorful animal, but it's not the tala ilan. The ilohosam tome, the tahor. Yeah. Then the real tala ilan was tome. This one was tahor. Remember, it was tahor because it was one unique animal created for the Mishkan, and then it disappeared. Special edition for Mishkan only. So Hashem created a kosher animal that looked like something very colorful or very tigery or something like that, and that was it. But it was kosher. It was a kosher animal. Amar b'Yosef, Yehochi. Now Yehochi is not a question for a change. Rashi says siyata. If so, I understand what he means. That's what I understand. The Targum that says sasgoina shesas bigvonin harbe. The Targum Yonason, when he translates the word tachash, yeah, what's tachash? He says sasgoino. Sasgoino. What does sasgoino mean? Let's analyze the word. Sas bigvonin harbe. Sas goino. What's sas? What's sosto in the simcha and the chasana? Sas, happy. Is happy, is joyous. Goina, bigvonin harbe. Gvan is color or shade. He's happy with the many colors that he has. That animal is happy with its many colors. I saw in the Dirshu booklet, in the Dirshu thing, I don't remember Shem who, excuse me, he says very nicely, why is he mentioning it over here, Yosef? He says, because this animal was not a known animal. We don't know what this animal was. That's what the Targum can't translate it as an object, as a noun. He's only describing it because we don't know what it was. So it says, it's that animal that's happy with the colors, but we don't know what it is. Yeah, by the way, this is all modern Hebrew. Sasgoni in Hebrew means colorful. Sasgoni, it's colorful. Yeah, yeah. No, I'm sorry to ruin your fun. It's not. It's sas. It's one word. That sas. The first shin, yeah, but the first shin is like that, and that sas happy. Sorry to ruin it. Yeah, that is happy. The word is sas. Only two shins. Yeah, I'm stickler for good Hebrew. I'm whatever. It's like you talk to these people who always correct you. You know, like I'm a lost case in Hebrew. Weiter, בסדר. רוב אומר שלום עליכם כבוד הרב השכן היקר. We are in the last narrow line. כוח. כ"ח עמוד א', בשורה הצרה האחרונה. רבא אמר. Yeah, you good? Are you with us, Rabbeinu? Yeah? רובע אומר. Says רובע. So up until now, let's summarize. What's going on over here? So up until now, Lamaisa, yeah, the pastors, they did not use treif animals in the Mishkan, right? They used kosher animals. The tachash wasn't a tiger. It was a kosher animal that looked like a tiger. You could check it. And it has those colors. I don't know if it's tiger, it had many colors. But Lamaisa, pashtus, was kosher. So if Lamaisa want to write the halacha sefer right now, I would be on the safe side, and I would say that only the kosher animal skin are nitma, but the non-kosher animal skin probably didn't exist in the Mishkan, and therefore probably they don't receive tuma. Let me summarize. It's actually a good place to summarize here. Yeah, what is the topic all the time? Yeah, Toshomea. The topic is like this: when you have oil that metame that creates tuma underneath between a mace, a dead person, a met, and other items. So, what kind of material? Any material. To bring down the tuma, any material connects the tumas mace to the others. Absolutely. That's Rashi at the beginning. However, there are some materials that, if they are, although they're connected to the ground, you have a house that's mechubar lakarka, right? Not only they transfer tuma, they receive the tuma. They themselves get the tuma. They're susceptible to tuma, even though they're mechubar lakarka. And these are so far only the materials that we saw in the Mishkan. Oil, and we made this sandwich, all three layers, leather, izim, right, the one from the goats, pishtan, tzemer, they all bring the tuma and receive the tuma at the same time. Finished. What about behemoth tameh? Probably not. It looks more like they didn't use behemoth tameh for the Mishkan because tachash was a kosher animal. Simple. Now comes Rove. Okay, so far so good. Rove Omar. Rove Omar. Oh, and by the way, but, if it's not mechuber lakarka, for example, if you have a beam of wood that is not connected to the ground, like a guy is walking with it on his shoulder, right? Then it's mekabel tuma regardless of the material. This is not mechuber lakarka. Things not mechuber lakarka, they always receive tuma. That's not a chiddush. Rove Omar. Rove says like this: "Oh, behemat mea demetame beoyel hameis mehocho." Rove says, "I have a different source to show you, to prove to you that the leather of behemat mea does receive tuma in oil hameis, but that's not from the Mishkan. It's from a different source." Okay, what's the source? The Tanya, or oy baoil riba oil behemat mea v'shalok biad koyen. Mazel tov, this week's parsha. It says in this week's parsha, oy be'or. Says Rashi, what does it say be'or? When it says that a leather material, this week's parsha, you have a leather jacket, no, motorbike, yeah? You have a leather jacket, leather boots, I don't know, and what do you have there? That not so nice tsaras. It says be'or. What's be'or telling me? To include behemat mea. When it comes to negoim, yeah, you have leather skin from the pig skin something. Then what? It's also mekabel tuma. And another chiddush, loko biyad kohen. What does it mean, loko biyad kohen? Normally, says Tosfos, I'm involving a lot of Tosfos here. Tosfos says normally you have a tsaras, something with tsaras, and then you show it to the kohen. And it tells you, yes, it's tsaras. Loko biyad kohen means you had some suspicious kind of beged. You're not sure, green, red, big, small, spreading. You took it to the kohen. Beforehand, it wasn't tome. It became tome in the hand of the kohen, and that's not the normal way of things. How do you know that it's mekabel tuma? The word be'or. The word be is teaching me all these things. Now, another halacha, which is not so connected to us, but it's the continuation of the brisa. Chotetz mikulan ve'oso achas mehen minayin. Let's say you took, according to Rashi, different kol amur. Let's follow Rashi. The pasuk talks about leather, semer, and pishtim in tzaras, right? Let's say I took a small patch of 1, 2, 3 small pieces of that fabric, and together I made a shalosh shel shalosh. Yeah. If you only look at each one, it is less than shalosh shel shalosh. Remember shalosh shel shalosh? Yeah. So one, I took a little bit of leather, a little bit of pishtim, a little bit of semer. I don't know, maybe chatnes, maybe not. Maybe the leather stops in between, and I tied them all. I sewed them all together. They're also mekabel tuma. It all accumulates. Minayin, how do you know that? Talmud Laimer, oy b'chol meleches or. But that's not so important for us. The main point for us is what? Wait a minute, the what? Negoim. We see that by negoim, by tsaras, it says be'or, to teach me not only or of behema tehoira, but also be'or of behema tmea. Okay. Now, Tosfos asks the question, why would I assume or behema tmea is different? So both Tosfos and Rashi at different occasions are saying or is always mentioned next to wool. Wool is usually wool of a sheep. It's the hoira. Or another time, sack. Sack is usually from the goats. Goats is also tohiro. The assumption the or we talk about is kosher, just like the tzemer or sack that's mentioned next to it. So how do you know also behemat tmea or behemat tmea, the leather of the tmea, from be'or? Wait a second, that's about negoim. So we assume just like negoim, so too regarding mace. Let's spread it. Mapitom. Negoim and mace, as we saw already, each one is a different world. One could argue and say, no, how can you automatically learn from Negoim to mace? Mala Negoim, you know Negoim's big ace. What's Negoim's ace card? Sheken Shtiv Erev Tome Bahen. The only ones that Shtiv Erev is Metame is only Negoim, not Shrotzim and not Tumas Mace. Negoim is the Chumrah that a thread that wasn't even yet woven, it's not a fabric, it's a thread, it's Mekabel Tuma. Oh, so Negoim is just like Chumrah, so maybe also or Be'emat Mea. But a mace where thread is not tome, maybe behemat mea is not tome either. You can't just have flowing import-export binyanav, right? Ela gomar mishrotzim. You can learn it from shrotzim. What about shrotzim? The Tanya. Shrotzim, wait a minute, shrotzim that don't have the chumrah of a thread. A thread that's touched by dead sheretz is not tome. Oh, so shrotzim is more similar to mace. Yeah, we don't have a tuma on one chut, on one thread. The Tanya, but look what it says there. Oh, only or behemat tehoiro, or behemat minayin. By the way, we're now in shrotzim land. That's a pasuk about shrotzim. How do you know that if a sheretz, that dead mouse keeps coming everywhere, and now it's touching the or behemoth mea? I have a leather jacket made out of the skin of iguana. So how do you know that it's tame? Talmud loimal oi oh, very good. The word oi is including behema touching the or of behemoth mea becoming tame, and so too the mace. That's good. Yeah, you can learn from that to mace because both of them have shtiv erev, don't have shtiv erev. Not so simple. I can still argue. A sheretz. Oh, now let's talk about sizes. A sheretz is the smallest shear to receive tuma, to give tuma. A sheretz, as we spoke about already before, you don't need the whole mouse. Even if you have one adosha is very small. Adosha, I was wrong yesterday. I said 15. It's 9. Yeah, you have in one gris, which is the shear of tsaras, and also the shear for a stain of a woman, nida, 18 millimeters, 22 millimeters, depends you ask. So a dosha is much smaller. A dosha is 1/9 of it. It says 9. I saw the Mishnah today. 9 adoshim in one gris. So sheretz is very, very small. It's 22 divided by 9. Your math is better than mine. It's very small. It's like 2 centimeters or some millimeters. I don't know. It's very small. Sheretz b'kadosha. It's metame, right? So, and the mace is metame b'kazais, which is much more. So maybe you can't learn. Again, you have a chumrah. Sheretz also has is like choshev chumrah of what? Very tiny is already metame. So you can't learn from sheretz to mace. Says the Gemara, negoim yechichu. Negoim are not so machmir in that respect. Negoim are more lekula. The goyim are only metame once you have an adosha. A gris, bigger. The gris, the big one, and therefore from them maybe you can learn to a mace. But the goyim on the other end have the chumrah of a thread. Each one has one chumrah and one kula. That's classical. We always do the same. Let's compare them with a common denominator. The chozar hadin. Let's find one common denominator between both of them. Lo izeh kerizeh, velo izeh kerizeh, which means each one has one chumrah and one kula. Right? Then the goyim have a chumrah of a thread, but they have a kula that the size is bigger. The shrotzim, the thread is not metame, but the size of a sheretz is very small. One thing for sure, common denominator, she'or tome behen. Or is tome in both. The also behemoth mea ki or behemoth tohira. In both of them, we saw mefurash oy be'or. We saw that behemoth mea receives tuma. Mazel tov. Now we can bring the third member. That's what we're looking for all the time. The third member is going to join the club. Right? In other words, yeah, each one has a chumrah and a kula, and therefore, and at the end of the day, one common denominator across both sheretz and the goyim is what? Behemoth mea becomes tome. So to mace, the behemoth mea leather will become tome. So it's true, says Rava. I'm not arguing with you, says Rava, in your history class, in your Tanakh class. Yes, okay, the Mishkan only had behemoth tohira, so what? But there's another limud we import from shrotzim and Negoim to tell me behemoth mea becomes tome. If you're uneasy about something, it's very good. Because if you follow the numbers, something here doesn't work right. Because mace, there are 3 sizes. The teeny, quincy little adosha, and gris is bigger. You know, I remember gris is bigger than adosha. Always, I remember it because gris is a gross. Gross is big in Yiddish. Gross, you know, yeah. Gross. So the grosser one is gross, and the small one is adosha, like adashim. That's how I remember it. Yeah. Okay. And zais, kazais is bigger than both. Yeah, kazais is bigger than 18 millimeters. It's 28 grams. It's not. Now, so it does make sense. So Lamaisa, both of them are below kazais. So Lamaisa, both of them are more chomer than mace, size-wise. So still doesn't make sense. Because a mace cannot learn from them because they're more chomer than him in sizes. Because both sizes are smaller than the mace. So I can, and that's Gemara's question. I had it difficult when I read. I was happy to see it in the Gemara. Omar le Rove, mi Barnish le Ravashi. Rove from Barnish asked Ravashi, no, ikal mifrach. I can break that. The common denominator of shortzim and the goyim, she can tmein the pochas mikazais. Both of them are more chomer than mace mitzad the size. They are tome in less than zais. Tomer b'mesh and metamel b'kazais. A mace which is only metam in kazais, maybe by them, a behemoth tmeya, it does not become tomid, the leather of behemoth tmeya. And therefore we reject that. Wow. We reject that limud. Ela Omar Rove. Omar Rove mi Barnish. Rove from Barnish is arguing on Rove the regular, Rove from Nardo. Asya bekal v'choimer minoitza shel izim she'en metame benegoim metame be'oil mace. Let me just explain that. You tell me, guys. I'm a little bit tired of talking. What are the three materials that are metame benegoim only? No. Sema pishtim, no. And not izim. Izim is not sema. Izim is different material altogether. The noitza shel izim, the one, the produce of the goats, is not metame be negoim. Oh, so you see negoim is lighter than mace, because by mace it is metame. Before in the Torah that the what's the names? The izim is metame, and especially we know it from where? From the Mishkan. Aha. We know from the Mishkan, moreover, that the middle layer was izim. So it's nitme ba'olam mace. So let's repeat. Kal v'chormi noitza shel izim she'en metame b'negoim metame ba'olam mace, or behemoth tmeya shemetame b'negoim, that we know, and udin shemetame ba'olam mace. Very good. In other words, if noitza shel izim, which by negoim doesn't receive tuma, and yet but the behemoth tmeya does, so the noitza shel izim, which in the Mishkan existed, and we know from the Mishkan that it's mekabel tuma b'mace, Kol sheken, the one of the behemoth tmeya will receive the tuma. Can you take on from here? Yeah, you'll take us further tomorrow. Thank you very much, David. The or behemoth tmeya is mekabel tuma. According to Rav, it's mekabel tuma. Yes. Although in the Mishkan really there were only behemoths tahoras, true. Yes, but who cares? Thank you very much. That's a very interesting piece of history. But at the end of the day, there's a drosha kal v'choimer from negoim to mace, just like with negoim or behemoth me'ez nitma, so to by mace. And the next question will be, I'm just starting you off. So why did Rav Yosef make a rule? We learn from the Mishkan that you only make from kosher animals, you make divrei kedusha. Who cares? The Mishkan will never come again. Beis Hamikdash, not the Mishkan. All the Mishkan was temporary. And la'alocha l'maisa, we don't care at the end of the day. Because regarding Tuma, the only material, by the way, that the Rambam mentions, I saw the Rambam today, the only material the Rambam mentions as that group of materials received Tuma that wasn't in the Mishkan is behemoth tmeya. Of course, because of Rava. You have Tzemel, Pishtim, Izim, or of Tehora, they all existed in the Mishkan. Here comes along behemoth tmeya also, behemoth tmeya, because of the Kal V'chomer of Rava, Libanish. But it didn't exist in the Mishkan. Who cares? We have a Kal V'chomer. That's where we are. Now you're ready to continue. Tomorrow they're going to have an event here in the hall. So if you don't mind giving the share inside the show. I mean, Brad will be here talking. Thank you to those who watch us from YouTube. Thank you very much for your encouragement. And we should be Matzliach and see Mashiach soon. Be'ezras Hashem. Thank you very, very much.